Dear colleagues and partners, good afternoon. My name is Elena Kunturi Tapiero. I'm the new regional representative at the European Office of UN Human Rights. And it's a special privilege for me to moderate this panel during this anniversary year. It's the 75th anniversary of the Universal Declaration for Human Rights. This is a time when multiple crises around the world are competing for attention, and the situation in Haiti is not receiving the spotlight that it deserves. The UN Human Rights Office is honored to have been selected to facilitate this humanitarian talk on gang violence in Haiti and its impact on humanitarian access and protection, which I hope will help cast the spotlight and help spur action for Haitians. This humanitarian crisis in Haiti is prolonged. Many speak of a country that lurches from crisis to crisis, from natural disasters to man-made ones, imposed from the outside and from within. The predatory control exercised by armed gangs over water, food, healthcare, and fuel, impacting people's freedom of movement, children's access to education, and many other rights, raises a complicated set of challenges to humanitarian actors, from access to maintaining operational space and reaching the ones in need. We look forward to engaging with our invited colleagues and partners and hear of the challenges they face, but also of the creative openings they have been able to generate. Today, we have a panel of distinguished speakers participating in this dialogue, both present and also online. From Haiti, we have Mr. Griff Boulogne-Pétion, who is the Director of Protection for Human Rights, and he's online with us. We have in person my colleague Arnaud Royer, who is the Director of the UN Human Rights Office in Haiti. We have Sandra Lamarck, who is Operations Coordinator at Médecins Sans Frontières, Belgium. And online from Geneva, we have Christian Salazar-Volkmann, the Director of the Field Operations Division at the UN Human Rights Office. As you may know, the UN Human Rights Office has a protection and promotion of human rights mandate. We operate from within humanitarian country teams in approximately 30 humanitarian emergencies, and naturally follow several other crises through our emergency response team in Geneva. Our added value in protection is the monitoring and analysis with a focus on vulnerable groups at risk of marginalization in the humanitarian response. And our aim is to improve that response by helping the integration of a people-centered approach that secures the views and the participation of affected people and brings an adequate response to their needs. I will now pass the floor to our panelists. I will ask them one or two questions, and I would ask them to limit their interventions initially to 5-6 minutes so that we have time to take questions from the audience, and we only have an hour for this panel. I will start with Christian Salazar. Christian, who is online. Christian, you have a long experience in Latin America. The phenomenon of gang violence is not exclusive to Haiti, but shared with other countries and particularly in Central America. What is it specifically about gang violence that makes the situation in Haiti a living nightmare, which were the words used by the High Commissioner for Human Rights during his recent visit? Christian, you have the floor.
Yes, hi, thanks. Just checking if you can hear me well.
Yes.
Yeah, well, good afternoon, everybody, and I think special abrazo to Arnaud, good to see you, and to all colleagues. As you mentioned, our commissioner has just visited Haiti to put a spotlight on the difficult situation there, and of the country as such, but also on gang violence. So my role is really here to say a few words on the phenomenon beyond Haiti. What most of you may know is that Latin America and the Caribbean overall, since many years, bears really the largest brunt, the largest share of homicides worldwide, and that the prevalence of violence of gangs and other criminal organizations is present in many countries, stronger or weaker, but impacting lives of many, many peoples. You can see that gangs are referred to as maras, clicas, combos. In the different countries, there are different names for them, and that illustrates the proliferation across the region. What we know, each situation is different, but we know there's some commonalities. There's an overwhelming urban phenomenon, predominantly composed by youth. Evidence shows more and more children, the age is getting younger. However, those gangs who are affiliated with organized crime often commit acts of extreme brutality, and these are controlled usually by adults. We know that the gangs exist in neighborhoods where governance structure is weak or inadequate, and where economic and social opportunities are limited, especially for young people. And while membership is often coerced, it's also a fact that gangs offer a sense of power and identity to marginalized youth, and also income opportunities. So we also know from observing the situation in many countries that gangs are and gang violence likely to increase with income inequality and with inequality in general, and with availability of firearms. Addressing the phenomenon is really a big challenge in many countries. The gang rivalry, if you look at it from a human rights perspective, the fight over territories, the clashes with the state security forces, they have serious implications on the economic, social, cultural rights of the population, access to food, water, housing, education, health. I know from my work, I worked many years in Central America. I must say, for example, Salvador, I remember how difficult it became for children who had to go to school. They cross gang territories in their communities, or ambulance cannot go through, people cannot go to hospitals, etc., etc. Then obviously the impact of gang violence on civil political rights. We have multiple reports from across the region of killings, disappearances, restriction of movement, forced displacement, women and girls disproportionately exposed to sexual violence. Then it's a factor, and particularly in Central America, in the northern countries, is a strong factor of displacement. We know across the region from the Internal Displacement Monitoring Center estimated more than 380,000 displacement only last year. And of course, many of the deaths that the gang violence leaves is gangs against gangs, young people dying in those confrontations, victims of killings, injuries, but also victims of extrajudicial executions, arbitrary arrests, inhumane treatment, etc., by state security forces. We have examples of gang involvement in political violence, threats, harassments, killings of candidates, vote buying, corruption, as noted by UN experts in reference to the elections 2021 in Mexico. We know the impact of gang violence in the street also is reflected in prisons. Ecuador, you may know, 440 inmates killed since February 2021, often beheaded and mutilated by gang confrontations in the prison. And then, many of you, and I'm sure Arnaud and others will mention, humanitarian access operations in areas controlled by gangs is extremely difficult, very, very risky for all the humanitarian actors, health providers, etc. We know that, how difficult it is to operate under these conditions. Let me just say to wrap up that policy responses across the region have been usually punitive, mano dura, That means disproportionate use of states of exception, curfews, rights restrictions, use of military to ensure public security. Many know the images of Salvador. 65,000 people have been detained, huge prisons being built. Our office and the UN Committee on Torture have expressed concerns about measures adopted under state of emergency and amendments to the criminal law, which weakens in general due process guarantees and rule of law. It is important for short and long time to combine. I mean, you need law enforcement measures, obviously, but they need to be squarely based on human rights, respect for human rights, important to train people, to also strengthen the accountability of security force, but everybody around. But that must be combined with protection and prevention. It must be combined a comprehensive approach to citizen security to address corruption, to address penitential and criminal reforms of the criminal justice system, and to combine this with the investment into community-based services and the rehabilitation of children and young people trapped in gangs. Also, I think international community, in many ways, I don't want to prolong too much. We want to hear from Arnaud and the colleagues, but the availability of firearms is an issue which also require international and regional cooperation. And then last but not least, the underlying causes, as we always used to say, no one's left behind. Often these are very marginalized territories, groups, where these groups then find an easy way to grow and to strengthen. So this is what I wanted to say as an introduction. Obviously, this is not an issue that humanitarians can solve or solve alone. This requires really our famous nexus between the development, the humanitarian, and the peace and security, if we call it like that, in a region like Latin America, the Caribbean. We must work together to really help the states to address this. So looking forward to exchange today, and I'll stop here, although you can be sure there's much, much more to say about. Ciao.
Thank you very much, Christian, and thank you for giving us the wider picture also across Latin America and the many intersecting forms of challenges and also giving us a tip that there may be solutions that perhaps we can come up with. Arnaud, you have worked in Haiti for many years. Can you tell us a bit more of the situation of gang violence in Haiti, latest developments, how the Office for Human Rights has integrated human rights in the protection response? And I know the office has also recently published a report on this phenomenon, which is on the webpage, and there was also a press statement today expressing grave concern about the ongoing situation.
Thank you. Thank you, and thanks for everybody attending this discussion about Haiti, because for us it's already a victory to have Haiti on this agenda, as is considered as a forgotten crisis. Since mid-July 2021 and the assassination of a president, there's been an escalation of the protection, a deterioration of a protection situation. A really dire situation has been developing since then. And it's important for humanitarians to understand that it's been a big change, because for years Haiti was known because of its natural disasters, and now it's known because of its gang violence. We changed also a lot about the dynamics regarding the intervention. According to OCHA in 2023, more than 5 million people in Haiti will be in need of humanitarian assistance. Today, 60% of the capital is under the control of gangs. And now, because there is this declared statement today, the violence is outside the capital, is spreading to the northern regions of the country. And I will give you a brief overview about the protection situation, but you will understand that we're not in any criminal setting in Haiti. All the indicators I will share with you will show you that we are like in an armed conflict situation, except we don't use the term, because under IHL, maybe Haiti doesn't meet all the criteria, but when we talk about the victims and their daily lives and what they are facing, already facing what I've seen in other parts of the world where we are in real conflict, armed conflict. So in terms of protection indicators, I will give you, I don't want to overwhelm you with numbers, but just in terms of casualties, people killed, injured, and kidnapped. Since early 2022 up to March 2023, about 6,000 people have been killed, injured, or kidnapped in the capital, and mainly in the capital so far. So that's one indicator. The second one is sexual violence, which HR, you know, have been working a lot on this issue across the world. And in Haiti, actually, it's not different from what I've seen in South Sudan, Congo, or Mali. Sexual violence has been used, and we published a report on that last year, as a weapon to terrorize people, especially women, girls, but also men and boys, and to punish them. We've been particularly concerned and alarmed about gang rape against women who live in a neighborhood under the control of rival gangs. But not only that, sexual violence, and in particular sexual exploitation, has been used by gangs against their own people, under the people who live in areas under the control of some gangs. Another indicator is forced displacement. According to the UN, as of March 2023, you have about 160,000 people in the capital who live in a IDP-like situation. Mainly, these people live not in makeshift camps. They live among host communities or host families. This also triggers an important phenomenon that we have not been able to establish. That's mean how many people are fleeing Haiti right now by land, by sea, to try to reach other parts of the regions like the US, Bahamas, or Dominican Republic. This number has not been established because we are not able to establish this number. What we can establish is the number of people who are forcibly returned by neighboring countries. Since January 2022, about 1,600 people have been returned, mainly from Dominican Republic. And these people have been fleeing also because of the violence. In terms of protection, before entering into the response, and would like to flag the cholera. I'm sure that you heard, because Haiti came back on the map of the international community recently because of the cholera. With this report that we published in January, we've been able to establish that the new cases of cholera were one of the consequences of the attitude and the tactic of the gangs. I mean, Haiti has been free to cholera since 2019. New cases reappeared in one particular place called Cité Soleil in October 22. But that was one of the consequences of a tactic of gangs of stopping sanitation programs, but also access to drinkable water to the people. So you see directly the consequences of the gangs into the humanitarian context, because we didn't expect to have cholera back in Haiti since 2019. So now that's the bleak situation. What can be done? Humanitarian actors, they face, and because this panel is also about accessibility, a problem of access. But there's two aspects in the problem of access. One is, of course, humanitarian actors, they don't move freely across the capital. They don't have access to these gang control areas. That's one constraint. A second one, which is often forgotten, is that the people living in these areas, they don't have access even to services outside gang control areas. You have services who are provided by some international NGOs, and they cannot be accessible because people are under surveillance. That's something new. That's something I haven't seen in Haiti since I've been working there. This means you have roadblocks in some areas, stopping people from moving freely. They are under control for the use of a mobile phone, and as soon as they leave the area, they have to leave all their stuff, leave their family behind, and explain to the gang who control the area while they are living. So access is also not only for humanitarian actors a problem, but also the population who may want to have access to some services outside these areas. Unfortunately, I believe that this probably will remain even worsened for two main reasons. The first one is the national police and local actors have shown their local actors and national authorities have shown their incapacity to restore public order, but also to regain control of these areas for more than 2 years. In addition to that, you have the international force. I mean, protracted discussion now shows that it's unlikely that you will have an international force soon. Therefore, humanitarians, they will face this access problem for the months and years to come if nothing is done on this front. And now it's a big issue in terms of access. How to have access to this area or enabling people to have access to services outside this area. And there is some pro and cons in terms of intervention. One of the, I would say, known approach is negotiation. Negotiation where humanitarian actors rely on seasoned staff or personnel to negotiate with gang leaders to have access. Also, some gang leaders are former staff or NGOs, because these people are shifted from normal life to criminal life. So they use that to negotiate access. Another way also is to use national actors as implementing partners. And the fact is, and I use the term implementing partners because they're really implementing an activity that is decided by other actors. In terms of negotiation and using local actors as implementing partners, you have a lot of risk. For the last one, you have a transfer of risk. That means you just transfer the risk of going into some areas to deliver a service that you cannot deliver yourself. That's the first one. But also in terms of negotiation, and we've seen that the gangs have infiltrated so much the local setting and the social dynamics of this area that they are becoming partners of some humanitarian actors, meaning that without them, they don't have access, and also in terms of delivery, they cannot operate without them. That creates a huge problem because you actually reinforce those who hold power against those who don't have power. So I wanted to flag that because I will conclude on what we try to do in Haiti. And I've been listening to the previous discussion here about localization. You have to know that OETHR in Haiti, but in other parts of the world, we have a long tradition of working with community-based organizations. Because we are not often seen as humanitarian actors, but actually we work a lot with community-based for what I call our traditional mandate. Traditional mandate is to monitor and document violations. That's what we are known in many parts of the world. But by doing that, we create a special relationship with community-based actors, survivors, victims. What we've been doing in Haiti is to use that for humanitarian purpose, meaning that they have access. They don't need to have access to these groups because they're already there. They live in the area. They operate in the area. So what we've been doing is to work with them and invest in institutional capacity. Because to become a humanitarian actor, you have to have institutional capacity to be able to engage donors. And that's what we've been doing for the past year. And some of these actors actually have become the humanitarian partner of some big organization, UN agencies or INGO. So that's one aspect that we've been doing. And the last one, and I will conclude on that, is the way also that UN and international actors have been working in Haiti. I hear a lot about not doing business as usual. And I think Haiti is an opportunity for that. For one main reason, the shrinking of funding. Haiti is not on the top of the map. As I said at the start, I'm happy to be here to talk about Haiti, this forgotten crisis. But because of the lack of funding, it's an opportunity to change the way we've been working, and I including myself as the UN representative. But for that, we need a couple of things. First, in terms of, we need, and we've been pushing for that, much more governance in the way we've been working. Meaning that when we do an intervention, we have to be coherent. They need to work together. That's the first thing. And that is not always easy. But we need to change that in Haiti, and it's possible. Because it has nothing to do with the country, actually. It has much more to do with the way the UN and international actors have been working. So, coherence instead of intervention. And the last one is accountability to affected people. I hear a lot of that, but in terms of materializing that is also a challenge. But definitely these ways, and we've been doing that in Haiti too, to have real-time feedback information from the people who have been receiving support from UN actors to try to change, if necessary, the bin we've been operating. I will conclude on these two, I would say, positive aspects.
Thank you very much, Arnaud, and also for giving us your direct experience from the field and also proposing some solutions. With this, I will give the floor to Monsieur Grève Boulogne-Pétion, who is the directeur de protection des droits humains à l'Office de la protection du citoyen, so the director for the protection of human rights in the Office for the protection of the citizen, the ombudsperson. And we would like to hear from you on how do you see the contribution of your institution to the humanitarian response. Monsieur Pétion, merci.
Merci beaucoup. Et je présente mes salutations à tous les panélistes et mes félicitations aux organisateurs de ce forum. Et c'est pour moi un grand plaisir, en tant que directeur de protection des droits humains, dans l'entreprise du citoyen. En fait, mon intervention, et le premier point, c'est le thème de protection. Le deuxième point, c'est la contribution de l'OPC à l'aide humanitaire, les défis rencontrés par l'OPC et l'État haïtien.
Good and I want to greet everyone who's part of this discussion. I would congratulate those who organized this. And I'd like to tell you, it's a pleasure for me to be here with. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm the director of the Ombudsman Office, and I am here to manage. The first one will be the role of the OPC, which is the Ombudsman Office in the coordination of protection mechanism. The second one would be the contribution of the Ombudsman Office to humanitarian aid. And the third one are the challenges that we're meeting.
Je continue avec le premier point, à savoir le rôle de l'Office de la protection des citoyens d'Haïti en matière de coordination des mécanismes de protection.
So I'm going to continue with the first item that I discussed, which is the role of the Ombudsman's Office in terms of coordination of protection mechanism.
Premièrement, l'OPC joue le rôle de lead dans la coordination des mécanismes de protection. Il permet aux différents acteurs œuvrant dans le domaine de protection, du développement, de l'humanitaire, de collaborer avec leurs homologues nationaux et locaux. C'est donc l'OPC qui facilite la convergence des différents efforts, de différentes interventions afin de protéger les populations les plus vulnérables ainsi que les groupes à besoins spécifiques. L'OPC utilise en ce sens ses présences territoriales et dans une certaine mesure des ONC, des différentes zones, pour monitorer les cas de violation, ce qui permet de donner des réponses aux besoins les plus pressants de la population.
So I'm going to start with the first one. The OPC, meaning the Ombudsman Office, plays the lead role in coordinating protection mechanism. As different actors working in the field of protection to collaborate with their national and local counterparts. Therefore, one of its roles is to facilitate the convergence of efforts made by different actors in order to protect the most vulnerable population and groups with specific needs. The OPC, through its field office, will monitor abuses and violation of human rights, an activity that allows the different protection actors to provide responses to the most pressing needs of the population.
Deuxièmement, je poursuis, l'OPC joue le rôle de canalisateur en matière de protection. Il oriente les actions de protection vers les buts visés par les politiques nationales de protection. Il y a des plans nationaux qui contiennent des politiques nationales de protection, comme le plan national de lutte contre les violences envers les femmes, la stratégie nationale de protection de l'enfance et le plan d'action contre la violence faite aux femmes, la stratégie et plan d'action de lutte contre la traite des personnes, et la politique migratoire d'Haïti.
The OPC, which is the Ombudsman Office, acts as a facilitator of protection intervention. It guides protection action towards the goals of national protection policies. There are several national plans, including the National Plan to Combat Violence Against Women, National Strategy for Child Protection, and Action Plan Against Violence Against Children, Strategy and Action Plan to Fight Human Trafficking, and Haiti's Migration Policy.
Je dois préciser que l'OPC était partie prenante de l'adoption d'un document intitulé Stratégie de protection 2018-2021, qui a tenu compte des différentes politiques nationales en matière de protection. Et lors du dernier atelier du travail du secteur protection le 10 février dernier, il a été convenu de mettre à jour un tel outil, de l'adapter au contexte social et pour ensuite l'adopter.
So I need to precise or emphasize the fact that the OPC participated in the adoption of a document entitled Protection Strategy, and that took into account different national policies regarding protection issues. During the last workshop of the protection sector, carried out on February 10, 2023, its members agreed on the need to update this document and to incorporate measures to address the current social context and then to adopt it.
Dans cette même lignée, l'OPC compte faire un plaidoyer pour l'adoption du Code de protection de l'enfance. Il en existe déjà un draft, bien entendu. L'OPC va organiser un atelier le 15 avril 2023 prochain, à l'occasion de la journée des enfants des rues, avec les différents afin de vérifier la conformité de ce code avec les droits humains et d'en faire la mise à jour en tenant compte des enfants livrés à eux-mêmes, sans oublier les enfants des rues.
Okay. It also intends to advocate for the idea draft. It will organize a workshop on April 15, 2023, on the occasion of the International Day for Street Children. And this workshop will go on with different actors that are involved in order to analyze its content and guarantee its compliance with human rights standards and principles, and also to update it to integrate mechanisms to address the needs of street children and those children who are kind of abandoned.
D'autant plus, le 15 mai prochain, à l'occasion de la Journée internationale de la famille, l'OPC compte lancer le tout premier débat, je dois le préciser, je dois y mettre l'accent, c'est le tout premier débat sur l'urgente nécessité d'élaborer le code de famille prévu par la Constitution haïtienne. Et cela permettra de collecter les premières idées, si vous voulez, les premières données, et d'identifier du même coup les grands axes dont il faut tenir compte dans ce code.
Furthermore, on May 15, on the occasion of International Day of Families, the OPC intends to launch the first debate on the urgent need to develop a family code as provided for in the Haitian Constitution. This will allow us to collect the first data and ideas and to identify main axes that must integrate this code.
Troisièmement, l'OPC joue le rôle de coordonnateur des actions de plaidoyer en matière de protection. Donc, il a été décidé dans le secteur de protection de et la des besoins identifiés et qui est chargé de les consigner dans un document de fait auprès des Haïtiens et de manière concrète auprès des institutions étatiques concernées.
Okay, and thirdly, the OPC office plays coordinates advocacy actions in the field of protection. The protection sector is committed to making advocacy actions effective. To do so, the OPC, as being the lead, has developed a framework in which each subsector must have the problems observed, the needs identified, and recommendations to be addressed to the Haitian state. Excuse me, can you hear me? Can you hear the interpretation?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Me? All right, thank you. Okay, so this is the last sentence. The OPC, in its role as National Institute of Human Rights in Haiti, is in charge for recording them and advocate for responses by the Haitian state, and mostly for the state institutions that are involved.
Je passe maintenant au deuxième point de mon intervention.
So I'll go to the second part of my intervention now.
À savoir la contribution de l'OPC à l'aide humanitaire.
Meaning, what is the OPC's contribution to humanitarian aid?
Compte tenu de sa mission et aussi de son budget insignifiant, oui.
Juste pour vous dire que nous devons conclure ce panel à 5h15 et j'aimerais aussi qu'on puisse donner la parole à notre quatrième panéliste et aussi à notre audience qui est là en salle avec nous. Donc, je sais que l'interprétation consécutive prend du temps, mais je vous demanderai d'être un petit peu plus schématique pour pouvoir écouter notre dernière panéliste aussi. Merci.
D'accord, merci beaucoup. L'OPC ne peut pas fournir directement l'aide humanitaire urgence, mais l'OPC peut lancer des SOS, attirer l'attention des autorités étatiques concernées sur les différents problèmes à travers des correspondances, des notes de presse, des appels, des conférences de presse, des réunions. L'OPC peut également identifier les problèmes et les besoins humanitaires au moyen des enquêtes menées par cette présidence territoriale. L'OPC peut faciliter les couloirs humanitaires, la rencontre des acteurs concernés, comme la Direction générale de protection civile et les autorités locales. Par exemple, l'OPC a créé une commission à Cité Soleil, composée des maires des OSC, des représentants de la DGPC et du DCPJ, afin de se pencher sur les problèmes humanitaires de manière efficace. Et actuellement, je dois le préciser, l'OPC est en train de mener une enquête sur la dernière montée de l'insécurité dans la zone métropolitaine de Port-au-Prince. Et après cette enquête, une commission peut être créée afin de donner des réponses aux problèmes. Il me reste maintenant que le dernier point.
Okay, let me go ahead and translate very quickly. In a few words, the OPC doesn't have the means to be able to help actually that humanitarian aid. But what it can do is to make calls and to call everybody's attention and mostly state institutions' attention, whether it would be through meetings, through press conferences, through different press notes, through different phone calls. Because what it does, it did identify humanitarian problems and needs, and it did carry a survey and its field offices. So what the OPC is actually doing, it has created a commission in the Cité Soleil area, and that commission is made of mayors, civil society organizations, etc. And this is to address humanitarian issues. actually the OPC is working and assessing what is the latest insecurity spread or hold in the metropolitan area of Port-au-Prince. And so it is working on the latest trends regarding insecurity and has the intention of creating a commission that will bring answers to this problem.
Ok, je finis avec le dernier point.
So I will conclude very quickly now with the last item.
Et concernant les défis en matière de protection.
Regarding challenges in terms of protection.
En dépit des recommandations et des suivis de l'OPC en matière de protection,
despite recommendations and follow-up of in terms of protection for human rights,
l'État haïtien n'arrive pas à mettre en œuvre les droits humains, soit par manque de moyens, soit par négligence.
the Haitian state is not capable to implement any human right, and it does so either because of lack of means or by negligence.
Il y a un manque de collaboration de certaines autorités étatiques.
There is a lack of collaboration among some state authorities.
Il n'existe pas de politique visant l'intégration sociale des jeunes et des enfants et des jeunes adultes sont recrutés quotidiennement par les gangs. En conséquence, la prolifération massive des gangs provoque la recrudescence de l'insécurité et donc la violation des droits humains en général.
So there is actually no policy targeting social integration of youth in Haiti. Therefore, children and young adults are being recruited every day by gangs. Therefore, you have a massive or widespread proliferation of gangs that is creating more and more insecurity and therefore violation of human rights in general.
Les populations des zones contrôlées par les gangs n'ont pas accès aux services sociaux de base et ces zones sont difficilement accessibles par les acteurs humanitaires.
So populations who live in areas that are controlled by gangs do not have access to services, social services, basic social services, because these areas are also very difficult to access, meaning humanitarian actors do not have access to these. We want to thank the OHC's continued support to the OPC. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for your intervention. And I will now pass the floor to Sandra. Who works for Médecins Sans Frontières. And Sandra, we would like to hear from you on what are the consequences of the violence and insecurity on, for example, access to health care, and what is the impact on your operations, and perhaps what can be done to address some of these challenges. Thank you.
Thank you for having me and inviting Médecins Sans Frontières in this discussion. So indeed, for me, there's a very striking image. 2 years ago, we still used to have an emergency center in a slum called Martissan. This emergency center had been running for 15 years without interruption. And we had to close it down. And today, if you pass by, on the Route Nationale 2, National Road number 2, which connects the capital city to the southern half of the country, so it's not a random road, it's a critical road. If you pass by and you will see our former facility, it's empty. All around is a no man's land. It's been looted. You have checkpoints and you have young men, even teenagers with weapons, controlling every single entrance of every street. And there are bullet holes and impacts on the walls and windows of our former emergency center. Now, what I describe here is not an isolated phenomenon, and actually there is a name for that, which is called martisanisation. So they created this term to portray this phenomena that first hit the slum of Martissan, and then started to hit Cité Soleil, and then Croix des Bouquets, and then Tabar, and then Bel Air, and then Delma, and then Centreville. And you said it, 60% of the capital city is not martisanized. Now, so it's very difficult to, is now martisanized, sorry. So it's very striking because this phenomena of the front line coming very close to critical services, and those critical services as a result having to shut down, the population having to flee, is something we've seen expanding in numerous parts of the metropolitan city of Port-au-Prince for the past 2 years, 2.5 years. And it's intentional that I use this vocabulary of frontline fighting, because for us it's a battlefield. What we see in terms of impact on access to healthcare and the patients we receive, and I'm glad you said it, is very similar to what we see in conflict areas. I know Haiti is not categorized, qualified as a conflict, and it's a forgotten crisis, but the magnitude of the needs is just enormous and really unusual. Even in conflict areas, we do not necessarily see that. Just to illustrate, last year, we received 2,600 people with gunshot wounds in Port-au-Prince. That's a huge number. We received 2,800 victims of sexual violence. So it's not just the numbers, it's also the type of wound we receive. The type of wound we receive are very hard to repair in terms of surgery because they use more and more weapons with big caliber. So the reconstructive surgery is becoming extremely complex. In terms of sexual violence, in the past, we had 10 to 14% of the victims that were assaulted by multiple perpetrators. Today, it's 72%. You understand what that means. I'm not going to name the perpetrators, but I think you get my point. So this is very striking. Another impact on access to healthcare, I mean, apart from the fact that entire neighborhoods are deprived of services, health facilities, water supply, it's also that it's become so violent that you have more and more health practitioners, medical doctors, nurses, specialists who are leaving the country. As recently as a few days ago, a prominent university hospital, well-funded in the country, not run by us, run by another organization, they say they've lost 22% of their medical staff in the course of just a couple of months. Another organization, GESCIO, which is the historic Haitian organization for HIV/AIDS, they lost 30% of their management staff. So this is catastrophic, and it's also impacting access to healthcare. So there are a lot of avoidable deaths, maternal deaths, neonatal deaths, pediatric deaths, because people cannot reach services on time. And I think you've very well described that for some neighborhoods, it's really hard for the population to go out and access services. In terms of how we operate, so Médecins Sans Frontières, we have 8 projects in the country, including 6 in the capital city, Port-au-Prince, emergency centers, trauma hospital, burn hospital, sexual violence clinic, and so on and so forth. So these 6 projects, it's quite unusual for us, by the way, to have 6 projects in one place, but it's still not enough. We are very far from covering the needs. And we've had to adapt and move constantly. So we've faced also security constraints. I just named the Martissan Emergency Center that we had to leave because we were on the front line and the neighborhood had been looted. But in the course of 2 years, we had to close, relocate, 4 times, including this time in Martissan, where we closed and we relocated 4 kilometers east, but also we had a specialized hospital for burn care, which we had to, in Cité Soleil, which we had to close down and move the services to another neighborhood. We had to temporarily close emergency centers and then reopen. So it's absolutely possible to work. It is possible to work in areas controlled by armed groups, but it's very difficult and it requires constantly adjusting your strategy, moving, and being ready to close your services, reopen, redeploy yourself, and take risks. But it is possible. There is a possibility to get and maintain access. So in terms of what can be done, I mean, there are many recommendations and things that we could do. I think the most important is to be very strict with humanitarian principles and medical ethic principles. Every time we have an incident, every time we have to close a facility or a patient is taken from our facility or our ambulances are searched, we denounce it publicly and bilaterally with the actors who did that to us. It's very important to be consistent and to call for support, even from the communities, in supporting those principles. This is absolutely essential. If we remain silent in front of the violations that we see or that we are victim of, we will lose our access and we will lose our credibility. So I think this is the most important, and we should not be the only ones doing it. I'm not saying we are, by the way, but I think that people should speak out as much as possible to defend those principles. Another thing that we strongly believe in, and this is probably the most important things I have to say today, and it actually joins what Arnaud said. There are so many local actors who have been present in difficult neighborhoods for 30 years, 40 years. They have very strong acceptance, very strong presence on the ground. They are running amazing hospitals. Some of them are religious foundations. And they are offering life-saving services. I mean, they are the ones maintaining access to healthcare in the country today. Without them, there would be so many more deaths. It's absolutely essential to support these actors. They need funding, they need technical support, and they also need to be supported in terms of maintaining their principle of medical ethics. And really, these are the ones doing the most fantastic work on the ground. It's not us, it's them, definitely. So we refer patients to them on a daily basis. So I think for me, this was the most important point, and I'll conclude there. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Sandra, for also painting this realistic but bleak picture of what it is. Let me now turn to the audience and see if there are any questions for our panelists. Just raise your hand and introduce yourself. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Kenel Kade, and I'm from Haiti. And actually, I don't think there's a word here we can use to explain the suffering. And I just want to stress on that because people are suffering. I've been living there. So just imagine that you are in a place that to go out to get food, you have to think twice, right? To think that you don't have a job, and then if you go out, you can get kidnapped. And you have to maybe go to a bank, a financial institution to learn to get released. That's when you will be entering kind of cycle of death for the rest of your life. So the suffering is huge in Haiti. I do think I don't see how to explain it, guys. You should be there to feel it. This is one of the points I want to mention. The second point I want to mention is that we don't emphasize like the support of the gangs on maybe they have from local government or the national government. It's really important to mention that if you want to break the cycle. The last point I want to mention, local organizations, they are at the same time providing life-saving support to community, but now I know most of them, they don't have like enough resources to keep doing their activities. I'm talking, for example, I've been running a local organization for more than 8 years, and we had to close on one of the most difficult areas. So we have to close the facility because we no longer have like a financial support to keep providing support to the community. So maybe the last point I want to talk to you, I do think that one of the panelists mentioned that. So it's really important to provide really, really urgent need, urgent humanitarian support to the community. But at the same time, I do think that humanitarian support is not enough. We need to think about what we did, what we should be doing differently in Haiti, because all of us, international, local partners, and things like this, we've been in the field. In this situation, I mean, kind of slip under our eyes and it get worsening over and over. We need to think, we need to identify what we miss to be able to provide like a more sustainable thing. And we need to work with, this is the last point, we need to work with, I do think that we need to keep local authorities, national authorities accountable because they are the first responsible for the situation.
Thank you very much. Is there another question before I give the opportunity to our panelists to get back to us, please?
Good evening, and thank you very much to the panelists, Sandra Alvisuto from WFP, Humanitarian Access. WFP and the humanitarian community, I mean, like the situation in Haiti is very critical, it's terrible, and our colleague just here just mentioned the suffering of the people. But I think like in Haiti, the humanitarian community as well have done like some step for humanitarian access that were not mentioned here. And I would like to say that I was really impressed by the work of the colleagues from UNICEF, WFP, IOM, and OCHA, under the leadership of OCHA, to really work on engaging with gangs. It was not easy because now we are dealing with, I think, around 200 gangs in Haiti, but there were some progress that were made. We were able to access Cité Soleil and Martissan lately to open the road. One struggle we had is really with the analysis, and there is a lack of analysis that is not shared by some of the actors and some of the missions and the political actors that humanitarian we are not having or access to, or we do not have the capacity. And I was wondering, is there any way that you could support us in the analysis and actor mapping? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Perhaps let's give the opportunity to Arnaud and Sandra if they wish to make any final comments.
On the last point, I mean, the chance you have with UNHCR is that our analysis is public. We recently published a report on Cité Soleil. And we mentioned also what you just raised about access. So I won't talk about the mission. I know I have a feeling of what is your message with regards to the political mission. The chance also for UNHCR, we are on both sides. Work inside the political mission, but also as UN agency. But no, things have been done. And I think what is important here also is I know in the room you have donors, is not, as our colleagues from MSF said, there are ways of working. Of course, there is red line also not to cross. And I think the principles are critical for international actors not to cross this line, to remain credible. But my message here, and also to the person coming from Haiti, the risk, of course, is also to depict a bleak situation when you will have international actors say, but what can be done? You know, we've been in this situation for years, for more than 20 years in Haiti. And then to completely shut the light. And then I don't see when, because what our colleagues from MSF said is critical, is when you have local actors or personnel who are leaving, just to join the US shore and try to have a temporary visa. And then we are losing everything in Haiti. And what we're losing first is hope. You just have a slim hope in Haiti now, but the door is closing. When this generation of people will be outside the country, then it will be over. And then the contagion that can provoke this situation to the rest of the islands could be very terrible.
Thank you, Arnaud. Sandra?
If I may?
Yes, sure.
Just 2 points, because as Arnaud was speaking, I thought of 2 aspects. I think one aspect that is critical if we want to maintain access to these areas is for actors working there to have a bit of security and predictability in terms of their funding. So I'm not talking about us, we don't have institutional funding, but you can't, these are areas where you can't open a service, run it for 3 months, leave for 6 months, and then hope to come back. You have to be there and maintain, and that's why these local actors that I was mentioning earlier are able to do a very good job because they have been there without interruption for 30 years. And that's how it works. So this is absolutely essential. The second one, because Arnaud was talking about hope, this is very important. Yes, it's very hard to operate in Haiti today, but it's possible. Actually, we just opened a high-level maternity hospital in the southern part of the country. You know, the part that was destroyed by the earthquake in 2021? We built it from scratch. We had to go through Martissan to bring all the material, the equipment, the staff, and everything. We did it, and it was inaugurated with the Ministry of Health in early February. It's offering really good services, and it's absolutely possible to even scale up and do more, but you need consistency. Also, in terms of your principle, it's very important that when red lines are crossed, we must be very, very, very strict.
Thank you very much for this contribution. So just to recap, the situation is bleak, but there is hope. A profound transformation is needed in Haiti, and human rights need to be at the center of it. We have heard of the active involvement of local community-based actors and creating institutional capacity and having creative approaches to humanitarian partners. And we trust that with international support and assistance, Haitians will be able to bring out their incredible wealth, and Haiti can be on the map again. On our part, we pledge to stand with the Haitians who are taking great risks every day, as we heard, to protect human rights in the most challenging circumstances. Thank you very much for being here. Have a good afternoon.